Start. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today is September 24th, 2023, and I'm delighted to have the incredible Norman Traversy with us here today. Norman has been instrumental in bringing to light a lot of the information about the trafficking and the pedophilia in Canada, and just wanted to have him on and just to give people an idea of where things have been and where they're going. So welcome, Norman. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm swell. How are you?
I'm doing okay. It's pretty warm in here today. I don't know why. Like for the end of September, it seems like the temperature here is it's higher than what it should be. What is your temperature like there?
Beautiful. It's about 74 degrees.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
So,
Not a
Norman,
cloud in the sky.
yeah, we started out that way, and it was supposed to be not a cloud in the sky, but now it's overcast. But it's what it is. At least I'm not inside on a sunny day. So,
Mhm.
so that's how I look at that. So, Norman, can you give us a bit of background? People know that the pedophilia and or sorry, I shouldn't be saying that word here, and the trafficking is a big issue for me that I've been trying to spend a lot of time trying to make sense of it, figure it out, see how we can address it, deal with it, stop it, whatever we need to do. But I was always fascinated by your story and how you got into leading the group in Ottawa on the when was that, 2021 on Canada Day. So can you start when you first
2020.
started? It was 2020. That's what I
Yeah.
thought. And I thought you told me recently it was 21. But can you tell us how you got started within 2017 and what you put into motion?
In 2000, I was a firefighter. I got shafted by workplace safety insurance for rescuing someone from a truck wreck. Ended up losing my wife and my home and everything. And I thought, I'm not taking this lying down. I'm going after these buggers. And in 2017, I had done what was called a private prosecution, where I had attempted to do one against the city of Mississauga, Mayor Bonnie Crombie, and the Workplace Safety Insurance Board. And I was told, oh, you have to go to Toronto to do that because that's where their headquarters is. And I thought, no, a crime's been committed, fraud and other crimes. And once a crime's committed, you don't have to go to where the crime's committed. So I went to the federal court a few blocks away, and the clerk of the federal court said, yeah, you can file at any court in the land if it's a criminal matter. And so then I went back to the Superior Court, and it had a big lineup, and it was like a half hour from quitting time. So I knew I wouldn't get in that day. So I went home and I phoned and I left a message. And I said, I'll be by tomorrow. I've been to the federal court. They told me I could file, and I'll be by tomorrow to file my private prosecution. I went there the next day and I signed in, and in the office was a justice of the peace I had not seen before, a woman. I sat there. I had a suit and tie on and a briefcase, and I was sitting politely. She came out, she saw my name, looked at me, took my papers, and then went back into the office without inviting me. And then she came back another way with two cops. She must have gone out a back way to get there. And she said, we're not going to see you. And I said, why not? And she said, well, we got a phone call from the Attorney General, Yasser Nakvi, saying that we're not dealing with this. And I said, well, can I have my papers back? And she said, no, they're the property of the court now, and go see if they'll give them back to you or give you a copy. So I stood in line by the clerk's uh, counter there with a cop on either side of me. And finally, this cop got frustrated. He went behind the counter and he came out and he said, I believe these are the documents you want. And then they escorted me out of the courthouse. And then they stood there in front of the door with their arms crossed, with guns on their hips. So I wasn't going to mess with these guys. So I went home. And when I got home, there was a message on the phone from the Ottawa courthouse. oh, we accidentally gave you the wrong documents. Please return them and we will give you your documents. And then I looked at the documents and it was somebody's peace bond. And it had all the personal information about these people, names, addresses, phone numbers, what went on, all of it. And they had released that to me. Now I have saved the recording so I can prove that happened. And I did not return the peace bond. So I've got that as well. And that's when I thought things are pretty bad in Canada. When Yasser Naqvi, a Muslim Brotherhood member, can have me arrested and escorted out of a courthouse for doing something perfectly legal, that's my right. That was 2017. Then I thought, okay, I met in 2018. I met this woman protesting outside of the courthouse, and we struck up a conversation. And I said, I'm going after Trudeau, the man, not the
Now,
prime
what
minister.
courthouse, what city were you in at this time?
Ottawa,
Okay.
same place. And I said, I'm going after him as a man, not as the prime minister. He's a punk. And she loved it. And it turns out she's a paralegal. Well, then I ended up with 3 paralegals volunteering, and we put together a 192-page legal brief. And we I had gone to file a private prosecution against Trudeau, and the JP accepted it, and he said you're going to have a pre-enquête hearing in 5 weeks, which is pretty fast. And we were pretty happy about that. So that hearing is to determine whether this is vexatious or true. So we showed up for the hearing, and that was September of 2019. And there was an election on the way. And we got there. By this time, there's a group of about 5 of us. And they said, oh, the judge is sick. So me versus the Prime Minister of Canada, and they didn't have a spare judge.
Yes.
The judge
What
is
were
sick.
you having him charged for? What was your
The SNC-Lavalin affair, taking bribes, malfeasance in public office, and something called Section 337 of the Criminal Code of Canada, which is a public official withholding something from someone who is entitled to it and demands it. And that will take you up to 14 years in prison. That's Section 337. And that thing could be a service, it could be money, could be information. It's just a thing. Well, I had charged him with that, which is kind of a catch-all. And then what happened was they said, okay, it's going to be next October. So October, we showed up. I was there with some other people, and it was for 9 o'clock. We were there at 8:30. My name was not posted. Normally, they have the names posted at the front so you know what courtroom they're in.
Not if they're planning something nefarious.
Yeah.
You don't want a record.
That's right. So I was there at 8:30, doors locked. I was there with a guy named Gary McHale. And Gary McHale has successfully done 9 or 10 private prosecutions. He actually did one against the commissioner of the OPP, and he won. So I had retained him and paid for his trip from Toronto to Ottawa. I put him up in a hotel, and he spent the weekend coaching me and going through the documentation, the evidence. And I also had recordings that Jody Wilson-Raybould's office gave me of the phone calls to her, the intimidating phone calls. I had a crate full of evidence. So 8:30, the door's locked. 9 o'clock, the door's still locked. I'm knocking politely. Nothing. Knocking loud enough to be heard, but not bashing on the door. And during that time, a well-dressed woman in a business suit with a briefcase came up to me and pointed at me, and she said, "You know they're going to kill you." And then she walked away. And she looked like a lawyer. I don't know if she was or not, but that was ominous. And we waited till 10 o'clock. The door finally opened, and a group went in, and we went in as well. And then someone knew who I was and the other people with me, and they said, "No, no, this matter does not concern you. It's for these people." So they obviously knew I was there. Oh, then later, I got the court transcript. And the transcript, which I still have, stated that it was suspended for lack of evidence, using the McHale principle for evidence needed for a hearing, which is a Supreme Court principle. Well, I had McHale standing next to me,
Wow.
and they invoked the McHale principle to keep me out, and they stayed it for lack of evidence. So it's been stayed. It's not closed. It's not dismissed. It's just put on hold. So I have every intention of reopening it. That was 2019. Now we're starting to get a group. It's turning into a movement. People are contacting me. The day before I went, I got an email from a police inspector in Queensland, Australia. Good luck tomorrow, Norman. So people are we're starting to watch, because here's this old firefighter going after the leader of his country in court. And I'm getting people volunteering services. I had a forensic accountant, one in Toronto and one in Sacramento. And I had investigators now working for me. I had volunteers. So now it's not just me, it's coalescing into a group. And they had put together this, I had written the first 6 pages of this legal brief, but then these volunteers, professionals, put together a 192-page brief. So now it's something that's, people are waking up to it. And on July 1st of 2020, I stood on Parliament Hill, and there were thousands of people there. I didn't count them, but I know it would be what, 6, 7,000. I don't know if you were there.
I think there would be more than that. It was,
Okay.
yeah. Who knows? It doesn't matter. All we know
You
that
know
it was
what? It
really.
was so many that I didn't know what I was going to say in my speech. I didn't have a clue. And it was like someone took over and gave the speech for me. And I had this red box that I was waving, and everybody wanted to sign it. And the brief was in the box. And I finished the speech, and I knocked it out of the park. It was a really good speech, and I didn't even know what I was going to say before I said it.
Well, that's one thing. You have a lot of integrity, but you also have a mission, like an intention. So the words would flow. But can we go back to September of 2019? I have a question that I've not asked you before. What do you think the chances are that someone in the courthouse, one of the court officials, went to the Trudeau government and informed him of what you had done?
100%. 100%.
Yeah. And if
You
not,
don't
just
go in there and say, "I'm charging Justin Trudeau," and then having the guy sign off on it, because he said, when I went there, he looked at it and he said, "I'm going to have a meeting about this." He said, "Go have a coffee, come back in half an hour." And I went for a coffee, and I came back, and he said, "Okay, this is going to go forward." So he had gone and met with his boss and then come back, and they said, "Okay, we're going to let it go forward, but we're not going to let it go forward in that we're going to have the judge sick, and then we're going to lock him out."
so
And
I have a
then
question though. What do you think the chances are they actually went right to the Trudeau government and informed them that you had
100,
filed.
100%,
So that's kind of
100%.
where, so I'm not as involved, like I'm not involved at all to what you're working on, but I do tend to watch what's going on. And what I've been able to do is I've been going through this process and watching what's unfolding, and then I go back in and fill in the blanks because I didn't know certain people at certain times, and I'm starting to see something that does not make me happy. But so what was in your brief on Canada Day, July 1st in 2020? What did it pertain to?
Three things. The first thing was human trafficking and child trafficking. That Canada was a hub for it, and by this time, people had informed me about this. People were coming out of the woodwork and contacting me and saying, "Hey, I know what Trudeau did 20 years ago. I know what he did when he was a part-time drama teacher. I know that his roommate is a convicted pedophile
Yeah.
who
And
only
this is
did."
all public knowledge.
Yeah, it's all public knowledge, but I didn't know this at the time.
We have to
And
watch what words we use just because I want to put this up
oh,
on
yes,
YouTube.
okay.
So we'll just use P for that word.
Yeah, well, maybe you can bleep
Edit
that
it.
out.
Yes,
Yeah, okay. I
no
won't.
problem.
Thank you. Yeah, so people started telling me things, and I started telling the people that were with me, and I gave the first thing was human and child trafficking. The second was the money laundering on the hundreds of billions of dollars with the workplace safety boards across Canada, and how that money is being illegally invested in the stock exchange and Chinese real estate. And I told everyone about that. That's in the legal brief. And finally, Trudeau and his corruption, how he's literally in bed with the RCMP, embracing Brenda Lucki and kissing her on the cheek while she's in uniform, and his utter contempt for her as a woman and as an official. And when I finished, I said, I'm going to deliver this brief to the American embassy, and if you would like to accompany me. Uh, and then the crowd just divided like the Red Sea, and I walked down the middle, and they followed me, and they were chanting and cheering and honking, and it was just gleeful. And we walked there, and the Americans were ready for me.
Can
I
you
had
say where
called.
you walked? Can you tell the audience where you walked to?
Sorry,
Where did you walk to?
the American embassy,
Okay.
which is about 4 blocks away. It's not far. And we had a massive crowd there. You can see this on Amina M on YouTube. You can see the march and all the rest. And everyone lined up to shake my hand. I was shaking hands, uh, you know, for a long time, for a long time. And the Americans, I contacted the FBI a couple of weeks before and told them that we were expecting 400 or 500 friendly, patriotic Canadians. And this woman I was talking to, a special agent, she said, "Okay, we'll make sure this gets to the right hands." And then
Hang
a
on.
couple,
So this is the FBI. I haven't heard this part. You talked about to the FBI in the United States that you are coming to the embassy.
yes,
And given
I,
what you know now, what do you think? Were they on the right side of good or the wrong side of good?
the right side of good. This special agent, she says, "I'll make sure this." I gave her my name, my number, my address, and I sent her a copy of the document that would be served. And she said, "I'll make sure it gets to the right hands. Thank you very much, sir." And I thought, okay, she's blown me off. You know, okay. Well, a couple of days before the march, my associate Amina and I went to the embassy, and I knocked on the door and I asked, "Can I speak to someone in authority?" And this guy comes out in a Hawaiian shirt with ID around his neck, and he says, "Hi, Norman." And then he points at Amina and says, I know who you are too, Amina. And I said, you probably know what kind of car I drive. And then he described my car and gave my license number. And so they were ready for me and they knew I was coming. And he told me the whole procedure to go through. He says, you won't be allowed to lean it against the door. You can't leave it there because we'll call the bomb squad, treat it like, you know. So he said, but we will let you lean it against the barricade that we will set up, do your photo op, and then send it by snail mail. I said, okay, that's what I'll do. And they were ready for me. And it went off without a hitch. It was a joyful, joyful event. And that's when the movement really started.
And it
That's when
did.
it really got big. Right after that, uh, Pat King was walking behind me while I marched to the embassy. We stayed in touch, and we were part of the convoy movement. We gave another march in August of 2020, and it was about half the. No, it was even bigger
It's even
because I
bigger.
remember. Yeah, the police motorcycle squad came up to me and they said, "Where do you want to go, Norm?" And I said, "I want to go down Wellington. I want to turn left on here." And I gave them the route, and they said, "We'll shut down the streets for you."
Yeah.
And they shut down the streets, and we led this march of thousands. And we had a motorcycle cop on either side of us escorting us. And that's when it really got big because the police said, "We'll shut down the streets." And there were so many people that we had to stop at an intersection until the tail caught up with us,
Oh,
because
wow.
otherwise we'd have been walking into the tail end of the march.
Wow.
And this
No,
is
I
over
was on
several
that march
blocks.
too.
Huh?
So I have a question. Who are the speakers? I want to talk a bit about Chris Guy because I didn't know who he was. I had heard of you, but I hadn't talked to you then, and I didn't speak to you that day. Too many people were around you, and I thought you don't need one more person introducing themselves to you. But I had a sign, and my sign was outing female P's in government. So that was the sign, and I think I was the only person in the audience or in the group that had a sign that dealt with P, as far as I know, right? But so was Laura Lynn? Was she speaking at the July 1st engagement? Did she speak that day?
I know she was there with me, and
I think she
I
did
do,
speak that day, and I
I
think
think
Chris,
she did.
because she had security with her. She had a security person as we were walking. She walked in front of me and he just said, I'm really sorry. Like he cut me off, right? And I'm like, don't worry about it. So she was there, but I'm just kind of curious as to where this movement is going because again, I hadn't put the pieces together because I didn't understand the players. I didn't know who she was. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'd seen her once before that at an event, a local event, but I didn't know who
well,
Chris Sky was.
okay. What happened was, I believe Laura Lynn spoke. For me, all I can remember is focused on me because it was the
Yes.
biggest
Well,
thing.
so
And so, go ahead.
why I'm asking, so I've been watching people trying to do the right thing in Canada, and it all seems like there's a roadblock after roadblock after roadblock that gets put up. And the same was with the trucker rally. Like I was only there one day, like near the very end of it. So I wasn't part of any of that, but it was very organized. It was very clean. The streets were clean. People were sitting just on the street sidewalk talking to homeless people. Like it was really a nice movement. But then we saw what happened with the emergency measures and all the lies that were told. And then we just come back to this million child march that we just had. And what I noticed, so I had called you the morning, September 20th of 23. I just called to wish you well. Right. And just let you know, like, I heard you speaking, I'm happy for you. And that's when you said that you weren't speaking. And I also told you about the union reps that were planning on causing problems for people. So I just wanted to give you a heads up just to watch your back. Right. But I know when you told me you weren't speaking that day, I thought, well, that's really odd because it seems that had happened a couple times. And then I had gone to the rally in Kitchener, and listened to them. Well, one of the people from the PPC came up and he was a candidate. I cannot find his name. I think it's Kevin something, but he spoke. And so I'm starting to put all of this together. And I know Laura Lynn was speaking on the 20th. I don't know if she was at the trucker rally. I really didn't follow a lot what was going on there. But when I got home, I noticed she was on the truck the whole time on the platform, but they bumped you.
Yeah.
And then what got me was the next thing you know, she's plugging Maxime Bernier. I had to write their names down so I can, like, she's plugging him, and he's the only person that was speaking up about the trafficking and all this kind of stuff. And then I noticed the rally I was at, they had a PPC candidate there. And it crossed my mind that really this woman has an agenda, that she is trying to make this a political rally. It annoyed me to no end when I came home and watched what was going on in Ottawa. Even the MC started plugging Maxime Bernier. This is supposed to be about the children, but it's like everybody has their own agenda in this country, except you. Your agenda is the right thing. You're doing this for the children. That's my agenda, to do the right thing. But this is what really got to me. And then, like I said, the MC started praising Maxime Bernier. Like, so what's the difference between LGB and that movement manipulating the people, or a political party manipulating the people for their own advantage? Like, I can't tell you how annoyed I was. I know I said before you came on that if you came on, I was going to be really nice. And if you weren't, I was going to be really honest. I'm being very nice in what I'm saying right now. But are they hijacking this? And then we have this, who's this other guy? Jagmeet Singh.
Jagmeet Singh, yeah.
So he's on the side with the LB and the upside down flag. And I'm like, this is all just theater acting to make it look like the PPC is doing the right thing. Well, I never heard her come out and really call out those union reps that were threatening everybody. I haven't seen her try to take anybody to task. And I'm like, can anybody in Canada do the right thing because it's the right thing?
Yeah. Jagmeet Singh, his real name is Jimmy Dhaliwal,
Yes.
and he is a convicted terrorist in India. If he goes to India, they will lock him up forever. Yet he's the co-leader of our country, this guy with a fake name. Why is the mainstream media never mentioned the fact that his real name is Jimmy Dhaliwal?
We already know what we think of the media. You know what's interesting? I forgot too. Trudeau had a play fight with the Prime Minister of India. What's his name? Masi? Am I saying that right? Masi? But he had a play fight with that, accusing them of killing somebody out in BC. And like the whole thing is just drama to take our attention away from what was really going on
It's
with the march, I
kabuki.
think. Sorry?
It's kabuki
What's,
theater.
what's
The
that mean?
Japanese theater with the puppets that hit each other.
There,
You know.
okay. So that's what I'm starting to see, that all of this is just a distraction. And why I'm mentioning Chris Sky, what has happened? So I saw him on Canada Day, July 2020, and I had my sign up. I do not know this person. I did not know his wife. And he come over and stood right in front of me, and he's doing this little back and forth, like two-step turn around, looking at me. And I'm thinking, why are you looking at me? And I didn't realize that you gave Trudeau's government a heads up with the philia, with the P. So they were looking to see, and they peppered the whole audience with people who were looking to draw out who was going to call out the P. That's what has come to mind for me. So I did not speak to the two of them. They're very animated in the way they look and their mannerisms. So I didn't know who they were. I didn't make any didn't talk to them at all. But what got me later, which was interesting, was I would start going to some of the Toronto rallies. And after a while, he started speaking there. And I couldn't figure out why those Toronto rallies all turned out to be nothing burgers. There was nothing like United Non-Compliance where you're preaching to the choir because nobody's wearing a mask. like he didn't inspire anybody. They were already there. He just happened to be one of the speakers. But then what I noticed was that all of a sudden now he's in the United States. Nobody's after him anymore. The police, before, they wouldn't let him into the country. Now they're all letting him in. He can travel wherever he wants. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm thinking, what is going on? Now he's over in the UK trying to distract everybody over these 15-minute locations. And I'm like, we've got them all in Canada. Like there's a printout with all the cities. So why isn't he doing this here? But he never mentioned the Million Child March. He never mentioned, like he says he's doing all these presentations, but you never see him on a stage. So is that theater for us too? Everybody shaking his hand in the street just to distract away from what is happening. And why this got to me, I always wondered, why did nothing come out of this? Like, why did nothing come out of the rallies? And my signs were pretty punchy. Like, what was the other one? P in politics is the virus. CV is the distraction. We the people, the solution. Like, I should have got some, they should have taken a picture of that sign at least. Not one of them have taken a picture of that sign in any of the rallies, and I couldn't figure this out. So then I go back and I start thinking, how did the Toronto rally start? And it was started by a man named Colin McDonald. And I went and looked Colin up. I never paid attention to him. He was Hugs Over Masks. And I just never really paid attention. I wasn't really interested in any of these people. I was just trying to see what we could do with the P. Anyways, and he brings a guy named Vlad Slobovic in, I think is his name, and they were Hugs Over Masks. And then next thing you know, they all have a fight. And I've got all the pictures taken off of Chris Guy's telegram that, you know, Chris Guy's a bad guy, whatever. This guy takes off to Mexico. So the next thing you know, they bring in, so Vlad's looking after Hugs Over Mass. Vlad leaves. Then they bring in another man named Lamont Deagle. Lamont Deagle, there's videos of him. He's part of the UN. And he's also known as the P apologist because he was out trying to normalize this in a discussion he had at a theater. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, what is going on that all these people are offside? Like, I could call it offside sexually. So Colin is outwardly gay, no problem. I don't have an issue with that. I think Vlad is. Then you've got Lamont, who is promoting P. And then you've got Chris Sky. When you go on and look on his telegram, he's got pictures of his wife in S&M outfits where she's got X's over her nipples. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, what do all these people have in common? And he's thinking that he didn't get involved or he didn't get elected as the mayor of Toronto because of Olivia Chow. Olivia Chow is connected to those labor union people. What was her name? The Canadian Labor Council. They're all missing Jack Layton, her ex-husband. Like, this whole thing is connected. And then Chris Guy moves down to Mexico, and lo and behold, he's in the exact same city as Colin, who left. So I'm wondering, do these people all work for Trudeau? Is what I'm wondering. Like, too many things don't make sense in Canada. And as far as I'm concerned, Chris Guy can stay over in Europe, you know, but he's trying to pretend that he's some big guy that everybody watches, but around here, nobody knows who he is. And these people are awake, but if they didn't go to the rallies and they didn't, or they weren't on certain truther channels, okay, that's the next one, the truther channels. They're just starting to realize that Trump isn't buying into the Q movement the way they want it. So I think that's about to have the wheels fall off of it too. But I'm wondering, is this whole thing theater? That have we all been taken? Don't get me wrong, Norman. I think the Million March for Children, I think that is a great thing to focus on, but we have to find solutions to it. But what I was going to ask you as well, you said your speech, they declined your speech for you to speak. So there's only two people that I noticed they tried to shush up. One was Pastor Henry Hillebrand, and he was talking about the P on the stage. And the guy who came up with this, what is his name? Kamel
El-Sheikh.
El-Sheikh. I know, quite the play on the spelling there. But he tried to shut him up, Henry Hillebrand, and said, don't talk about this. And I'm thinking, this is exactly what all this alphabet soup is trying to hide. They're trying to normalize the P. So it's great that the parents are starting to stick up, but like, I'm just like, is this whole thing theater? Is what I'm starting to wonder, or people have their own agendas, or they're trying to distract. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'll tell you, I contacted Kamel. He's a twin, by the way. So there's Kamal and Kamel. And I contacted Kamal, and he said, "Oh no, you want my twin brother Kamel?" And he gave me his phone number and his email. So I phoned a few times, left messages, and left my phone number and spelled out my email address. Then I emailed him and I said I would like to speak, and I told him who I was. No reply. Then through a friend, I got in touch with his organizer, this woman, and I contacted her a couple of times and said, I'd like to speak. It'll be very short, 1 page long, and here's what I want to talk about. And nothing from her. And then the night before, I was I had gotten a guest suite for Laura Lynn and her assistant. And we were in the meeting room at where I live. And we're sitting around having pizza. And I'm telling Laura Lynn, I've been trying to get on to speak, but no one will get back to me. So I don't think I will be. And she said, well, the roster's full. And the person that's doing this is sitting next to you. So here's this woman sitting next to me. And she said, you're not on because you didn't provide a photograph and a bio. I said, well, I didn't know I was required to provide a photo and a bio. And I said, well, can you put me in? And Laura Lynn said, do you know who this is? He doesn't need a photograph and a bio. And so I thought I'd sneak in there, but no, no,
I
I
think you
was
didn't get to speak because you were going to talk about P. I really do.
well,
You want
no,
to?
it's not really, but yeah, I was going to talk about measures that we could take, but the big thing was I was going to talk about Section 17 of the Ontario Municipal Act, which states that municipalities shall not levy taxes. It's right there in black and white. And if you're paying taxes, you are supporting P and grooming, and you're paying the police that escort these drag queens.
Oh,
Those
totally.
guys are all getting overtime. That's coming from municipal property taxes. You don't have to pay them. It says right in the Act, Section 17. And then just don't pay it.
And at
And
some point, we have to start asking questions when our Premier Doug Ford was elected, because he was going to look at repealing or at least revising the sex ed that was introduced in 2015, and he didn't do it. And
by
then
a
in 20,
convicted pedophile. Oh, I mean, a convicted P. Yeah.
and in 2022, December, the province funded our first DQ story hour. And then April 23, he said he got people in his cabinet to say it, but they basically said anybody who protests these DQ story hours are going to face fines and jail time. Well, who would do that except somebody who's interested in children? And we have to start looking at this, that there's only so many reasons why they would do it. And I'm not
Well,
saying he is or he isn't. Did he get enough
I
money
think
that he'll turn a blind eye? I don't know.
yeah, well, it was obvious that Kamel didn't want me to speak. Laura Lynn wanted me to speak. The woman that was doing the booking came up with this, you didn't provide a photo and a bio. Well, why didn't she just email me back and say, please send a photo and a bio? I
Right.
would have done. And here's something I forgot to mention. One of the things I charged Trudeau with is Section 337 of the Criminal Code of Canada. You know what they did after I did that? They took it out of the criminal code. And the way they did it
Wow.
was they had an omnibus bill where they were getting rid of these archaic laws like witchcraft or, you know, that sort of thing. And they snuck it in there. And so, of course, these stupid MPs don't even read this.
Can
So
you
it's
say
no
that
longer, huh?
they put it in with witchcraft or took it out with witchcraft?
Yeah, took it out.
What was in witchcraft with the criminal code? What
They were getting rid of a bunch of what they said were archaic laws. Okay.
so they can
So
do witchcraft now?
yes, yes,
Well, you look at all
it's
the
a
satanic,
religion.
yeah, you look at all the satanic buildings or the on the one Parliament building, all the different artwork. You and I've talked about that. So isn't that interesting that they've made it now that that's legal again?
Yeah, and 337 is out of the code.
These guys are just all criminals, and that's why I'm saying whatever's going on here is I think Trudeau, the reason he snickers and laughs is because they're helping get all this started with people, their own people, because too many things just aren't working out. And the other thing I was going to say, Laura Lynn, she did the interview with this Kamel guy back in August. So she was in on this right from the beginning, even though she said he was the founder. She's
Mhm.
promoting her political party. When I saw her back in 2018, maybe 19, because I was paying attention what was going on with the sex ed, and she was at an event called Mama Bears, and it was a group of Christian women. so I hate these labels because sometimes as soon as you put the C word on there, they think they're special. But there was a doctor who came out. Her name was Dr. Ann Gillies. And I think Ann Gillies was down in Ottawa. I could hear her voice at the very end. And she was saying that what was in the sex ed was basically what they're trying to decriminalize in the diagnostic statistics manual for mental diseases, mental health issues. They're trying to decriminalize it. And I heard her voice, but she tried to run as an MPP in Ontario. So Laura Lynn just made this whole thing political for her. I am just pissed that they would turn around and grandstand. And part of the reason why, when I told this guy who was running for PPC in Kitchener, I told him they're turning Cambridge into a 15-minute city. And I told him what my thoughts were, what's happening in Kitchener and Waterloo. And there was another fellow there listening. I don't know if he was Middle Eastern or like Greek or what. He was listening to every word I said. This guy blew me off. He goes, well, I have to follow what the party says. And I'm like, so we got to wait until you guys decide whether you get in or not with the corrupt system, with the Dominion machines, and we all have to wait for you guys to play your little political game. Like, this system is so disgusting. And then, like I said, when I saw Jagmeet Singh and they're all play fighting, I guess it's just theater for us to keep us all stupid and not realizing just how corrupt all the parties are in Canada. I don't know. Right. I'm just questioning it is what I'm questioning, because I think you've done so much to bring attention to this topic, but it's almost like they're always one step ahead of us. And this is why I think Justin Trudeau is always the big smile when he's got Zelensky with him and he's laughing and mocking at everybody, because his team is putting some of this together. And don't get me wrong, just because they started it doesn't mean we're not going to keep going through with the momentum, but we need some primary protection. That's the other thing. Chris Guy's stealing my terminology. We need primary protection. We need to start finding out why people aren't getting charged for even grooming the kids. And I was listening to a woman on, I think it's Joy TV in the United States, and there was a police officer with her. She said it's not illegal to groom kids for sex in their state. Is that why they never get anybody ahead of time, that they have to have a victim first? So there's a lot of things to look at, is what I'm trying to imply. And I know some of these people are friends of yours, and I'm not trying to imply anything, but something isn't adding up. But if they think they're going to make this political, what's the difference of being manipulated by a politician as compared to the LB, whatever, all that community? What's the difference? Manipulation is manipulation. I don't appreciate putting energy into it and thinking that there's something good's going to come out when you watch her just get on the stage and just take over as if she's going to be the political savior. Like, this is how Canada got into the mess it is. It's so manipulated.
I'm ignoring all of that. I'm ignoring it. And I've had different people contact me and say, this is important. And I say, yeah, it's important, but I don't care. I'm just focused on getting Trudeau. That's it.
Yeah.
If I get him, everything else will fall into place. So I don't care. I don't care whose motives are what. I don't care who's working for what. All I know is that Trudeau has broken several laws, and he also violated a 14-year-old girl, and that's what I'm going after. Now, I've been locked out of court. I've been arrested and thrown out of court, and it's still in the system, but now there's a group called the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, the AIN. And they are the Aborigines, the Maoris in New Zealand, the Dene in Northwest Territories. They are around the world, and they're on every continent. And they have signed treaties with each other, but not with the Crown, not with the US, not with Canada. So these are sovereign nations, and we have meetings every second Thursday, and they have their own court system, their own tribunal. And the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People was just released recently. It's called UNDRIP, and that acknowledged that they have the right to rule themselves and have their own system of justice. And then Canada, with Bill C-15, acknowledged that as well, and acknowledged the AIN tribunal as a legitimate judicial body. So what I did was I took my matter, a different matter concerning the Attorney General of Ontario, and took it to that tribunal. And they did not have to take my matter, but they voted. These are people around the world, the Cook Islands, around the world, and their leaders voted to accept my matter. And the Attorney General of Ontario ignored my letters and ignored the letter from the tribunal. So he's in default. So I won against the Attorney General of Ontario, a default judgment. Now we have to exercise it. They granted me, a fine, and what I can do now, because it's considered a foreign judgment. So if you owe me money in France, Sandy, and I go to a French court and they do a judgment saying, yeah, Sandy owes Norman money. Well, I can come to Canada and register that with a Canadian court, and they accept it. They have to accept it because we have a treaty with France. And then you're still not paying me. I can put a lien on your house. So I will be putting a lien on the private house of the Attorney General of Ontario. So now that we know that it works, I will be putting Trudeau on trial in the AIN tribunal. So he's going to have his day in court, or I'll have my day in court, regardless. And this will have teeth.
I
So I
heard
haven't
some
given
things
up.
about that. I didn't know everything you were doing there, but that explains it better than I've heard in the past. So that makes a lot
Mhm.
of sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
But
the
this has to
man's,
be called out. Like we can't go back to what we had, and we can't keep the current state of the corruption in this country.
yeah,
It's just,
so I'm not distracted. I'm focused.
yes,
And so I'm not going to, go down another rabbit hole. This one I've been down deep enough.
yes.
So I don't care what other people's motives are. It doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter to you, but it does still matter because it's still manipulation. So other people can choose to focus on it if they want to, right?
That's right, but I'm not. I'm
You're
only
not going to.
focused.
Yeah, I wasn't implying that you should.
No, I'm only focused, and I've told people, people have got all these great causes that come up to me, and
Yes.
I say, I haven't got the time.
Yes,
I'm
totally.
only
I get
I'm
that.
only focused on this. And then once Trudeau's behind bars, then maybe,
Yeah, and
you
it
know.
doesn't matter. Everybody has to choose what makes their heart sing, and they got to focus on what's important to them. And you definitely have your cause. You have it figured out.
Yeah.
There's no doubt
Yeah.
in my mind, right? So I'm not suggesting you don't focus on other things, but I am focused on different things that are touch my heart. And that's important that everybody do what's right for them and focus on that. So I'm not asking you to, I wasn't asking you to look into this or anything along that
No,
line.
no, I know
I'm
you
just,
weren't. I know
yeah,
you
I'm
weren't.
just
I just
noticing.
wanted to make that clear that
Yeah.
from day one, from the time I rescued that guy from a truck wreck and changed my life forever, uh,
And that should
I've
never have
just
happened because you were off duty. You did the right thing.
if I was in uniform.
Yes, you're on your way to work. Was that right? Or on the
Yeah, I
way
was on
home?
my way to work,
Yeah.
and there's a few things. One, I believe it's section 248 of the Motor Vehicle Act. If you witness an accident, you are obliged by law to stop and render all possible help. So I obeyed the law. I'm also a trained paramedic
Right.
and a firefighter. So you think I'm driving past a truck wreck
No.
in uniform? I had to. Of
Yeah.
course I had to. I had no
And that's
second
this.
thoughts. Then also my religion. There's a little story in the Bible about the Good Samaritan.
Yes. And
And what
that's
did he?
you.
Well, you have to.
I
You
know.
have to. And that's in the Bible. So I'm following my religious edict. Also, I was required to swear an oath. And that oath, part of the firefighter's oath, you can't work as a firefighter unless you've taken that oath. And it is to help your fellow man in time of need. In time of need, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not at work for another hour. I'll see you
Right.
then. No, time of need. And that is a sacred oath that we all take. So I was obeying, I was required by my oath as well. And also my culture, firefighter culture is that's why we become firefighters. That's why I didn't become a cop. I had a job as an accountant with Coopers and Lybrand, and I gave that up because I thought this is not for me. I want to kick indoors and put out fires. So I became a firefighter, even though I had a much better job before. And that's why I became a firefighter. So I had to stop. And then I thought, how can they do this to me? I was firefighter of the year in 1999. You know, I've got a perfect record, and yet they threw me under the bus, including the scummy union. And I thought, this is rotten from top to bottom.
It
I'm going
is.
after the head of the snake.
Yeah.
So I'll go after my union later. I'll go after the city of Mississauga later. But right now, I'm going after Trudeau because he's allowed this to happen and he's encouraged this. So that's my focus is getting Trudeau. And I'm not even focusing on the child trafficking because if I get Trudeau, the rest will all come into place.
I think there's enough people focusing on that, and maybe they're in different countries, that by now all eyes are on Canada just because it is so corrupt in so many levels. And even watching, when you look at your union, the head of the Ontario Labor Federation or Federation of Labor is the one who hosted the Zoom call to get everybody out there against the parents who are trying to protect their kids. Like sooner or later, we got to start looking under the hood and start looking at what their perversions are. And some of them I've looked up on social media, and you can see that they identify as trans or using the pronouns. Like this has got to the point that we have to start questioning the motives of the people in charge. And I don't see why that 126 people on that list, nobody's even suggesting they get investigated. And I think it's time we start looking at the sunshine list and see how much money these people are making to mess up the families. Like this is just 126. Then they've got all the layers of the people who are following the marching orders. So I hear in Toronto on Friday, they got very, what do you call it? Very aggressive with some of the people. Some of the, so the people who are protesting the LBG ideology, one of them, I think, got a bloody nose or a bloody
They
eye.
arrested the person that got assaulted.
Right. So either we have some of the stupidest cops in the world, or they're all complicit. And it's exactly as you said, as your union and what happened to you as a firefighter. It's like they go out of the way to do the exact opposite of what they're supposed to do. Well, there's only so many reasons for that. And I think a lot of it is the Satanism, and everything is inverted in Canada. I think they should use some of those weapons and take out some of the parliament buildings that have all the demonics on it, right? And I'm not saying that out of violence. Obviously, nobody in there, but we have to get rid of some of these sites. Like it's just what's going to change if we don't.
Hey
I don't know.
Sandy, can I finish up with my speech that I
Sure.
didn't get to give?
Oh, I'd love you to. Thank you.
Okay, this is the speech I didn't get to give. It's time to clothe ourselves in the armor of God. We're in a war against sinister and evil forces, forces that want to pervert, corrupt, and control the minds of our children, forces that want to turn them away from God, family, and true self-love, and to lead them down a path of destruction, despair, self-harm, and mutilation. We are in a war with a warped, twisted ideology not seen since the Hitler era. We must not let our children be sacrificed to a demonic radical minority, a tiny wicked group that are far less than 1% of the population. These are our kids. They need to worship God and be serene within their God-given bodies, not intimidated and brainwashed by perverts, resulting in catastrophic harm that will end the family structure forever. Our time is now. We must stop the mental, emotional, and physical abuse of our children. This will be the plan going forward. We will demand that schools have parents and properly vetted volunteers monitor classrooms and hallways daily. We will keep the boys out of the girls' bathrooms and girls' sports. We will form committees to combat the radical school boards. There will be no more personal pronouns, pride flags, pride paraphernalia, or woke bullshit. We will monitor the school libraries for inappropriate reading material and remove content that we deem harmful. Every school in every province across Canada must be supervised by the parents and brought into check. Every educator who does not cooperate must resign or be dismissed, effective immediately. Our children will not be sexualized. We will take over these rogue boards to protect and defend the rights of our children to enjoy a normal childhood. We will be on high alert, instilling the values and morals our children need to nourish and nurture their minds and souls. Today, we are the change. We are the ones needed to defend our children, to restore the core foundation of God, family, and country. To anyone who seeks to mess with our children, you are on notice. Leave our kids alone.
Very nice. And I can see why they didn't want you speaking, Norman, because
Yeah, they
that
had a
was
copy of that.
exactly, what's that?
They had a copy of that.
Yeah, of course they
I-
did. And you're very nice. You're a lot nicer than I am. I don't give people the benefit of the doubt that you sometimes try to give them, because they have made so many mistakes and time again chosen the wrong thing to do, whether it was you as a firefighter and what they did to you there. It doesn't matter what they did in the courthouse. It's always they make the wrong choices, but it's not just the people at the top doing it. It's at every level. And that is an amazing speech. Thank you very much for reading it. That's an honor to have you read it out loud. And if,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah, it's, I'm very impressed with that. And that's what should have been the focus of that whole rally, as far as I'm concerned, right?
Sandy, you've got a copy, I believe.
No, you didn't send me one, unless you
I
just
will send.
emailed it to me.
Yeah, I've emailed it to you, but if can't find it,
You have an
I'll
email.
send.
If you've emailed it, I didn't get it.
Okay, then I will send it again, and please post it.
Okay, I will, because that's a great speech. And you know what? People are coming up with proactive strategies. So we're working on a source guide for parents to show them how to be able to articulate and argue what is in that curriculum compared to abuses. So there's people coming out with all kinds of different information that the parents can take, because people aren't normally talking about this kind of stuff. You don't talk about it openly. So they don't always know what to say, what's wrong and what's not. And what is really interesting, so I will definitely post that, and I will probably put it on social media just as a standalone as well. And maybe I'll try to edit part of this out and have you speak it too. But I was at an event on Friday night. This is how bad it is. And it was like a concert. And on the intermission, I went to the ladies' room. This little boy walks in. He's probably 8, 10 years old. I don't know exactly. And he's got a mask on. And he looks at me and goes, "I'm a girl with short hair." And I looked at him. I said, "You're a boy with a mask." And he goes, "I'm a girl with short hair." And his eyes are dancing like he's being a bit of a turd, right? And I said, "You're a boy with a mask." And then he goes to open one of the doors. And I said, "The stalls are all full right now." And I said, "You go get in line." So the kid goes back to the back. I figured he'd left the washroom, but when I come back out, he's standing about 3 people in, and he's got his mask on, but he's got the hood of his jacket up really tight, as if he's ashamed of himself. So he leaves, and then the second half of the show comes on, and the second half was all natural instruments. Like there was a cello there, a harp, a bass, a guitar, a pump organ. Like this is all just natural sounding music. And the first song was about love. At the end of the first song, the mother gets up and walks out with the kid. Like they can't handle the vibration of the true loving energy. But it was just interesting. And the kid didn't have his mask on when he left. But like it's everywhere. Like why should we be subjected to a kid coming into our bathroom? Don't, like, I'm not saying this as a victim. I'm just saying this is silly. Like this is absolutely ridiculous. This is how bad it's got, right? Ontario should be embarrassed. Canadians should be embarrassed that this has got to this point, I think.
Yeah.
But anyways, I thought I would just share that. So do you have anything you wanted to add? Norm, anything that you want to add to the viewers who are watching this to maybe inspire them to focus on what's important to them, or anything along that line?
Just that I'm not quitting, and this is my full-time job, and that now I'm part of a network. Um, I'm not really a leader, although I believe I did start this network. But this network spans the globe. And I got contacted by this woman that saw a video I did with Michael Jaco, and I suggest people go and see that. His name is Michael Jaco, Jaco, and he's an ex-Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 6, and I was on his show with Artur Pawlowski. So please go see that. Well, this woman saw it, and she said she couldn't sleep until she spoke to me, and she got me through my GoFundMe, and I called her up, and it turns out she's a doctor, and she's connected to a network of doctors that are disgusted with what happened with COVID-19. So now I've got the doctors part of the network as well, and it's just snowballing. They never should have let us have the internet.
That's it seems to be, that people are really starting to clue into what's going on, good and bad, right? There's a lot of manipulation out there too, but
Yeah.
it's
So this just keeps growing, and then I told her, I said, "Oh, you need to know so and so," and it's amazing. So anything that I've got, resources that you would not believe. I've got American generals. Uh, I can get a message to Donald Trump if I need to. I rarely do, but I have contacted him in the past, and he did write me a thank you letter,
so.
which
So you're
was
saying you did this through the generals?
did what?
Are you saying you contacted Trump through the generals?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But he did write me. So he's got my email address. I've got all the other Trumps, I've got their phone numbers and emails,
I've got a
but
couple of the Trump's emails too, but at some point, Norman, we have to ask, how did I get some of their emails? Are they really just part of the deep state that they go back to them? Like, so we have to make sure that we understand that infiltration is
well,
happening at every level.
it's not something that I use.
Yeah.
It's like an emergency thing for me. But during the convoy, I was at the hotel where we ran the convoy from that hotel. And I was in charge for maybe the first day and a half. And after that, everything was delegated out to other people who were experts at what they were doing. We had logistics, we had security. Danny Bulford was the security. We had transport. We had garbage collection. That was organized. That wasn't just off the cuff. And it was all run out of this one hotel. And I sat there because I was not a leader anymore. I was just a gopher and an observer. And every night I would go home and I would call the American U.S. Major General in Montana, and he would do a military style debriefing. What happened here? What about there? And he says, Norman, if you would, could you go to Metcalf and tell those guys to knock it off and to do this? And you know, he was giving advice to the truckers through me, and he was calling Trump every night and telling Trump what I saw. So it was a lot went on that people don't know about.
A lot of crazy stuff from the sounds of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Norman. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today, and I hope people found this information helpful and inspiring, and be able to use it to, just make the world a better place and really focus on the changes that we're trying to do. So if you like this video, please hit the like button and share it with others, and let's get the word out. So thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for checking in.